So happy second day of winter, huh? This is so weird. It's just weird. But yesterday was the winter solstice, which means, of course, that the Earth's axial tilt on our end is the farthest away from the sun, which usually means it's dark and cold. Now it's just dark. It's not cold, but it's darker than normal. But it also means that the sun is coming back, and every day from this point forward gets a little bit, the light stays a little bit longer. So it's an astronomical event that has great practical meaning for human beings, and it's been celebrated for thousands and thousands of years because it signifies that the sun is coming back, and therefore life is coming back. Because without the sun, of course, nothing happens on Earth by way of living things. And so it's been celebrated for as long as we can remember, human beings can remember. In Persia, it was called Yalta, and Yalda, and it was a celebration of a god born from a rock, whose name was Mithras. And in ancient Rome, it was Saturnalia, which celebrated the god Saturn, the god of the harvest. In Slavic countries, the pagans celebrated it at a holiday called Korachun, and in Germanic countries, of course, Yule, and we celebrate it as Christmas, the birth of the Christ. And it's interesting because historians believe that Jesus wasn't born in December at all because shepherds wouldn't be out watching in their fields in the cold. More likely May or maybe September. But the early Christian church had a very wise approach to celebrating holidays, and that was, if we can make our holiday fit the holiday that's already being celebrated, they're going to be more likely to celebrate our holiday. And over time, the two will merge. And so Christmas became a corresponding holiday with these other winter holidays that occur around the solstice. Another reason, of course, was the symbology, because the return of the S-U-N, it's easy to see how that became the coming of the S-O-N. And we're going to talk about the biblical birth story and its metaphysical meanings on Tuesday night, but today I want to talk about more the message of the life of this person that was born on the day that is now called the Mass of Christ, or Christmas, because it's about us. It's about us just as much as it was about this person named Jesus who was born in Nazareth. But I want to start with a story that I ran across this week. I think it comes from Chicken Soup for the Soul, but I'm not sure. There was a man named Paul who had a very wealthy brother who gave him a new car for Christmas. I want a brother like that, don't you? Yeah. On Christmas Eve, Paul came out of his office and went toward his car, and there was a little boy who was standing there admiring it, and the little boy said, "Is this yours, mister?" And Paul said, "Yeah, my brother gave it to me for Christmas." And the little kid said, "It didn't cost you a cent?" And the man said, "No, my brother gave it to me." And the little boy said, I wish. And the man knew what he was going to say. "I wish I had a brother like that." But that's not what the kid said. He said, "I wish I was a brother like that." And he kind of was stunned by the statement, "I wish I was a brother like that." And he said, "Do you want to go for a ride?" And the little kid said, "Yeah." So they went for a drive, and after a while the little boy said, "Will you drive to my house?" And the man said, "Sure." I thought that boy wanted to show off to the neighbors, but instead the little boy said, "Can you stop where those 2 steps are?" So the man stopped the car. The little boy got out, ran inside, and Paul could hear the little boy coming back, but very slowly. And with him was his little disabled brother. And he sat him down on the step and he said, "There it is, buddy. His brother gave it to him. Someday I'm going to give you one just like it so you can go see the Christmas lights." Well, Paul was joking up, of course, and he went and picked up the little boy and tucked the 2 of them into the car and took them on a grand tour of the Christmas lights, learning, once again, what we all know, that giving is much better than receiving, even when your brother gives you a new car. The reason I tell that story is because that's what I want to talk about today, being somebody like that. being a brother like that, or a wife like that, or a father like that, or a grandmother like that. Being the person that the life and teachings of Jesus calls us to be. He's born on this winter holiday, so we say, but more importantly, you know, he taught us some things that I think it's good to remember at the end of this long discussion we've been having about our own evolution and our evolution through loving kindness. Because Jesus was a man, regardless of the stories of Immaculate Conception. There were a lot of stories of Immaculate Conception and in that era, at that time, in that area of the world. And what they mean is, pay attention. This person is going to do great things. So pay attention. So he was born, and then only much later, born to a man and a woman, and much later became the Christ, the Anointed One, when he learned more about who he truly was and what his relationship with the universe was. And he was given that title because of what he did, what he taught, who he was, the light he brought into the world. Not because of the way he was born, but because of who he was and what he did in the world. And he attained what we call the Christ consciousness, the consciousness of the Anointed One. It is, the way I define it, is a real lived awareness of Spirit's presence in all creation. And I don't know about you, but every once in a while I catch a glimpse of it. For me, it's not a permanent state. In Sanskrit, it has another name. It's called Kutastha Chaitanya, the consciousness of that which remains unchanged. It's also known there as Krishna consciousness. In India, it was Krishna who, in the Bhagavad Gita, told the human of Spirit's presence everywhere. Siddhartha Gautama, who later became the Buddha, arrived at the same consciousness with different terms. And he spread that knowledge, of course, to the Far East. But in the Middle East, it was Jesus who carried the message. It was Jesus who said, "You are sons and daughters of the Father." He called that God consciousness the Father within. And so we've been talking all year about our own evolution as spiritual beings. And the people I just mentioned, Siddhartha Gautama and Jesus, and those who wrote the Hindu scriptures about Krishna, had all evolved to a point where they understood something really fundamental, and that is that there's no separation between them and whatever you call that creative energy of the universe, whether you call it God or the stream of infinite potential or universal consciousness or whatever you call it. There's only one of us here, and we're all part of it, and we aren't separate from one another or from it. That's what all the scriptures tell us from everywhere. They all tell us that it is our work in this world to try to develop that bigger consciousness, whether you call it Kutastha Chaitanya or emptiness or Christ consciousness or the formless plane of infinite reality or whatever. It's the same idea. We elevate our consciousness so that we remember and see and perceive that there's only one and that it's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in everyone we see. The thing about scriptures is this. They're all, every one of them, our stories about that creative power and how we relate to it and how we fit into the cosmos and how that infinite power seems to want to have a relationship with its creation, us. And I think all of the scriptures call us to evolve into a consciousness of that relationship. We all evolve. We are all evolving as individuals and as a species, but boy, is it slow. It's very slow some days, isn't it? I wake up and think, I am highly unevolved today. I think I'll go back to bed for a while. I don't want to inflict myself on anybody today. And other days I can get it. Other days I can, go to the store and see God in people. I can read the news and stay in a prayerful space instead of a space. it's a difficult thing. We are evolving, however, I know that, and we're moving toward a world where being human means understanding our connectedness with other humans and with other life and with all that exists. But it starts right here with us, with you and me. It starts with every one of us as an individual, and it starts with those of us who want to change the patterning of our thoughts, and therefore change what we believe and the way we experience life, and therefore change life itself. And it begins with us taking responsibility for our actions and for our words and for our thoughts. Yesterday I found the perfect description of this process on Facebook. The post said, thank you, Michael, "Humankind is on the edge of evolution from human to kind. Your participation is required." I think it's perfect. Your participation is required. Our participation is required. We've been talking about this whole year about how we can participate more in our own evolution. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, said, "From the moment some human stood up and said, 'I can think,' compulsory evolution stopped, and evolution was up to us from that moment forward." And we've focused on practices that bring us into that higher state of evolved thinking. And for the last few months, they've been the practices of loving kindness, because that too seems to be the message of all of the scriptures. Be kind. Who thought it would be so hard to be kind? Some days it's very difficult. Some days we don't want to mess with anybody, let alone be kind to them. Just don't let me see anybody. But our participation is required. And our participation is required to do acts of kindness, because when we do acts of kindness, that helps stabilize our thinking and our perception and our way of believing even. When our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs become more stable, we start to live differently. I think it was Henry David Thoreau who said we begin to live as a higher order of being. We begin to achieve a little bit of that Christ consciousness, and we begin to be able to shine more light on our own lives and into the world. And the Christ consciousness becomes like a window that spirit shines through, unimpeded. There's no dirt on that window. It's clean and clear and kind of focuses our light for us. And I think that's what the story of Jesus is all about for us. He was born in a little tiny town in the middle of nowhere. His parents were from Nazareth, for Pete's sake. Remember? Gospel of John, Nathaniel says, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" It was the pits. It was not a nice place to be from. But at some point in his life in Nazareth, Jesus became aware that there was something more to this universe than carpentry, something more to this universe than the human eye can perceive. And I want to talk for a moment about a couple of apocryphal gospels that didn't make it in the Bible, and I think you'll understand why when I tell you what they say. Because they told the story of Jesus' childhood. And, you know, in the gospels, the gospels, either the ones that are in the Bible, start with his ministry, or they start with his birth and then leap to his ministry 30 years later. The apocryphal infancy gospels, they're called, portray Jesus as sort of a supernatural bully, actually. Quite a brat. He was quite a brat. He did some not nice things to his neighbors, and when they complained, he made them go blind. I mean, come on. He was like the worst neighborhood bully you've ever heard of. But at some point, he realized something different. And at that point, and this shows up in the Quran as well, he crafted birds out of clay and then set them in flight, brought them to life and set them free. And he continued to grow and evolve and realize that there was more about this Father, he called it, Abba, Daddy. There was more about this than he knew, and he wanted to know about it. And so in the canonical Gospels, the ones that were in the Bible, he goes into the desert. He goes away by himself for 40 days of contemplation. 40 days is as long as it takes, really. That's what it means in the Bible. As long as it takes. He went into the desert for as long as it took for him to understand that he was one with the Father, and that he was the place that the Father could do works in the world, this power he called the Father. But to get there, he had to grapple with his stuff. He had to grapple with his fear and his ego and his I'm not enough. I mean, after all, he was born in Nazareth, right? He had to grapple with that. He had to grapple with every single thing that we have to grapple with. In the Bible, they write this great story about it, because good stories get remembered, about how he goes into the desert and is tempted by Satan. But what he's tempted by is his own ego that says, you know, you got this power, why don't you just use it? Make bread out of that stone. Or you got this power, why don't you just fly through the air and forget about all of this? And he had to say, I'm here for a different purpose. I'm not here to show off my ego. I'm here to be love. I'm here to be kindness. I'm here to show other people that they too have this within themselves. I think that is the important point about this story. And so he comes out of the desert after this time of contemplation. And in his very first teaching, he says, blessed are they who hunger and thirst after righteousness, meaning kind, good life. They shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Love your enemy. Pray for your enemy. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all else shall be given unto you. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Get the beam out of your own eye before you start worrying about the splinter in your neighbor's eye. That was all from the very first time he came out of the wilderness and started to teach. I'd say he learned everything in that 40 days about what it meant to be the presence of God on earth. And so, in my mind, the message of Jesus is it doesn't matter what your parents did for a living. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter what you did when you were a kid. It doesn't matter what you did 5 minutes ago. What matters is that you see that you have a relationship with this collective body of God and with the universe, and that you try to love all of it, even the ones you call your enemies. That you try to be kind to all of it, even when it feels like you'd rather just smite that fig tree. That you pay attention to your own responsibility in life and take the beam out of your own eye, rather than worrying about judging the neighbor who has the mote in his or her eye. That you be kind to all who are downtrodden or ill or that society rejects. That you be kind. I mean, I think that's it in a nutshell. That you be kind. That you approach life with love. I think that's what Jesus was talking about. And he was a very highly evolved being, as was Siddhartha Gautama. And it's taken over 2,000 years for some of us to realize that he was teaching a lesson that's for us. It's about us. It's not something frozen in time. It's a plan for life. Wrestle your ego and remember who you are. The kingdom of God is right here within each one of us. It becomes manifest when we make it manifest through ourselves. And now, we begin to understand that loving everything is what really matters. Everything and everyone. So this Christmas birth story, I think, is all about giving birth to that consciousness within us. You know, remembering that this idea of our own divine nature is conceived solely by that spark of life within us that we call the soul or the spirit. There isn't any outside help needed. And that the divine you, just like Jesus, the divine you is born into a place that's full of thoughts of limitation and lack, and I'm not good enough, and how can I do that? And a place that simply doesn't recognize the truth of who you are. And with Jesus, Same as with Jesus, we have to come face to face with that truth. And we have to say to our ego and that part of us that tells us that we're not worth it, get thee behind me. Get thee behind me, because I want to walk ahead of that stuff. I don't want to drag it around with me. I don't want to live from it anymore. I want to live from that part of me that looks out and sees only places and people to love. Right? I think that's the message that Jesus was bringing. Then we can begin to understand why he said, pray for your enemies and treat them kindly and pray and love them and love your neighbor as yourself. And if somebody asks for your coat, give them your shirt. And all of those other things that he said about being loving, about being kind, about allowing ourselves to be the conduit for that love. And it's at that moment that we start to hear those angels singing. They sing all the time, we just don't hear them. They sing because they're celebrating all of us who are trying to get to that place where we're walking ahead of the ego and being love in the world. And it's at that moment that we step fully into our true nature, our divinity. It's at that moment that we're capable, as Jesus reminded us, of moving mountains, of changing the world. Starting right here, starting right now, by loving the person next to us, by loving the person we meet in the store. So I invite you to let this whole Christmas story speak to that place in you that's pregnant already with intuitive knowledge about who you really are. Let it move you into a place of greater love and greater understanding and greater kindness. And let this Christmas be the time that you give birth to that higher order of being that's already in you. It's just trying to make its way into the world. Let Christmas, this one particularly, be the beginning of your life as love, as kindness. That's my Christmas wish for you. And so join me as we simply allow our awareness to fall deeply into that place in our innermost being. It is our inner sanctum. That is the place we are connected with all life, with the creator of that life. It is the place we can always find peace, even on those days when we feel like turning our back on our higher self. There is still always peace there. And it is from that place that I recognize and acknowledge there is only one life. I call it God's life. And it lives and moves all through creation, through everything I can possibly see, through those planets that are so distant that we can't see them with the naked eye, through those stars whose light we see thousands of years later, through all of the universe. This loving presence, this loving joy, this loving power and wisdom exists. And it exists within me, and it exists within every person here. It exists within every rock and animal and plant and flower and in the spaces between the molecules. It exists in the air all around us. There's no place and no time where God is not. And knowing this, I know that each one of us allows more fully that idea that we are here to be the presence, the place where God shows up. To be born more fully and completely, to become part of our permanent awareness, so that our acts are acts of love, so that our thoughts are thoughts of kindness and upliftment, so that wherever we go, we bring joy, so that truly that light shines unimpeded from us into the world and lights up those around us. Starting with the person we see in the mirror and extending to everyone we meet, even those we formerly called enemies. This is simply who we are and who we are becoming more, moment by moment, day by day. And because I know this, I give thanks. I give thanks for this time of celebration. I give thanks for each person here. I give thanks for life itself, this place of evolution and unfoldment. And from this deep gratitude, I let it be. I set it free. I know that it's already so in the mind of God, and it is unfolding now. And we acknowledge it and anchor it by saying together, and so it is.
I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering. I am remembering. I am remembering who I am. I am remembering who I am.
Amen. Excuse me. We now have an opportunity to support our community, to be grateful for the fact that this group of people is here, and we're here solely because of your gifts and contributions, and I thank you. I thank you very much for that. And also it's an opportunity to step fully into that stream of life, as Jesus also taught us, that as we give, so shall we receive. And we put ourselves into that stream of life through our giving. Giving love, giving money, giving joy, giving smiles, whatever it is. And so join me now in simply knowing that as we give, so do we receive, with gratitude, with joy in our hearts. And please repeat after me. My gift goes forth to bless and to prosper.
My gift goes forth to bless and to prosper.
It does its good and perfect work.
It does its good and perfect work.
And returns to me multiplied abundantly.
And returns to me multiplied abundantly.
I am grateful.
I am grateful.
And so it is.
And so